records. And all of them have been a practice in imagination. So after making so much music, I'm asking myself what it is really, and where do all the ideas come from? The oldest music instrument found is a flute that is 40,000 years old. And that was from a time when we were hunting mammoths and share the planet with Neanderthals. I should also say that this flute plays the same musical scale that we use today to create most pop songs. The Neanderthals, they are no longer here because probably we made them go extinct. They used technology, tools. They had language and brains bigger than ours. But as far as we know, they didn't have art and didn't have music. Maybe they didn't have our imagination. Are we, the humans, the only ones that can play and enjoy music? So in one project, we gave synthesizers to the monkeys of Stockholm Zoo to see if they had any musical skills. They didn't. Actually, no skills whatsoever. They really suck. Maybe music is unique to our civilization. So we sent specially composed music into space from the Swedish space station S-Range. It was transmitted 9 years ago as a business card from humanity. Still no reply. So that was another project of mine that failed. But I'm an artist, so it's not my job to succeed or to find the answers. It's my job to ask the questions. So I'm very interested in the process of imagination and new ideas and why some people get a lot of them and others can't even imagine that the world is changing. Technology evolving all the time. New ideas emerge from old ideas, maybe except from crocodiles and bicycles, but almost everything else could be and will be much better than it is today. Like old cars, they were really bad. Today they're getting better. Not to mention old computers. Very, very bad. I cannot even imagine what a computer can do in 20 years from now. Old art, some of it pretty boring. 20th century, it got more interesting. Contemporary art could be quite interesting.
1, 2, 3,
Take music.
4 o'clock,
Rock and roll.
5, 6, 7,
When it first was invented, people said that, oh man, this is so fast, this is so hard, right? And now we can think it's kind of harmless. 20 years later, people said, oh man, this is so hard. This is so hard and fast. This is an example of rock and roll today. Music style called grindcore. And believe me, in a few years, people will say, oh, this is so slow, this is so soft and harmless. Because things change all the time. In a time where the world is changing, we are changing too. We are merging with technology. Some say that we're even transforming into a new species, replacing nature with human civilization everywhere. How come so many of us don't reflect over this? Because we can see the present and we can remember the past. But the new human also need to imagine the future. Lack of imagination can be dangerous. You remember these guys? No music, no art, probably not so much imagination, and you know what happened. This was a school a few hundred years ago, and a school of today. So is this the best school we can imagine? This is a residential house from ancient Rome, and a newly built house in Stockholm 2,000 years later. I'm not an architect, but I'm thinking, is this the best we can imagine? The cities that we have and the ones that we're building, are those the best we can imagine? These are directly boards from different companies, some into banking and some creative businesses, but why do they all look the same? You know, in the world of music, it's much better. You can tell that these guys like hip-hop, these guys like black metal, and these girls like Japanese pop. So I'm not saying that the directive board should dress like this, but you have to admit that it's much more creative. This was the structure of power in ancient Rome, like 5,000 years ago. This is the structure of most armies, and this is the structure of most corporations. So we educate and we structure our societies and organization according to a somewhat industrial model. So we accept the roles in these structures and we stay the same. But I'm not so sure that these structures are the best environments we can imagine for new ideas. Sometimes bad environments could be a motivation for innovation, like global war or space race. But surprisingly often, new ideas come from play and from having fun. When the church organ first was developed into the first self-playing music instrument, then the very first programming code was invented 400 years ago, and that made it possible to build the first programmable machines that started the Industrial Revolution. The mechanism from another music instrument, the harpsichord, became the typewriter. So technologies coming from music instruments became the computer that has totally transformed the world. And mechanical toys became robots. This is one of the guys that invented this new amazing material, graphene, that is only 1 carbon atom thick. A project they did before graphene was the levitating frog. So they proved that if you generate a magnetic field that is strong enough and put a living frog in there, the frog in itself will be magnetic and float in midair, which is not very practical, but it's very cool. This is an early game for Amiga from the 80s. It's not very impressive, right? The guy who built this game, however, came up with better and better ideas, like PayPal, Tesla Motors, and SpaceX. His name is Elon Musk. So these are the questions that I'm interested in. What are the mechanisms behind creativity? Where do new ideas emerge? And can we improve our idea-making skills? I'm convinced it's a matter of training. So many of our projects, they are designed to force you to think non-linear, like this very complicated combination of chess and Rubik's Cube, where you move or twist, or a very difficult labyrinth game that is changing all the time. Another project is a game where you have to come up with a totally new idea in 3 minutes and pitch it to the other place in 1 minute. Looks like this. It's on Kickstarter right now. So if you want 110 million new ideas for $20, please support the Kickstarter. It's called Makanatsu. So we'll go to seminars to hear people talk about new ideas and creativity, like I'm doing right now. But in one way, it's like reading a book about losing weight. I mean, the book won't make you lose weight. You have to exercise. So you have to practice creativity by being creative. And you have to practice your innovation skill by making actual innovations. So me and my colleagues make training camps for those who want to improve their idea-making skills. There's a machine that generates big questions about the future and about humanity, and at the same time generate music by flipping these 3 cubes. And I'm also trying to observe my own creative process as an artist, trying to find out where the ideas come from and under what circumstances. For example, some years ago I did an app that transforms any sound into funky music in less than a second. It's called a Yellow Fire, 29 kronor. And you do that by moving and flipping colored cubes on the app. The whole thing became a car ballet, originally planned as a real-life ballet on the airport Tempelhof in Berlin, but it ended up digital. The app looks a bit like a cube, the Rubik's Cube. So we built a project where the colors of 16 Rubik's Cube control 6 different instruments. And it's a very, very difficult instrument to program. Or you can play with candy. So you make a song and then you eat it. Or changing the perspective with these giant inflatable cubes with built-in gyro sensors for music control. So instead of me flipping the cubes in the app with my big fingers, the cubes are really big and I become really small. So from one idea came in many other ideas, but always by asking the question, is this the best I can imagine? Can a drum machine be a social meeting place? Can it be a game that brings people together? Well, this one can, if it's so big that you have to make friends to make music. Instead of planting a tree outside Malmö's new concert hall, so this tree is listening to when you play on it, and it plays back its own music. This is music sculpture. You play it by touching different areas of the sculpture and then each other's skin, developed in collaboration with different groups of disabled kids. A light sequencer. Who made a tennis game for blind people or seeing people blindfolded. You play with sounds and music instead of a ball, because people with disabilities sometimes can develop a superpower. And this is a game where blind perform much better than seeing because they have super hearing. And inspired by this, we're building superhero costumes that block out one human sense and replace it with a non-human super sense. Or music control by brain waves. The system reads alpha and theta waves of the brain if you're relaxed or focused, and that way you can make musical choices. This is a fairly new built block in Kista called Nord, and me and students from KTH made transformed that into world's biggest online game. Singing Tunnels is a system that transforms ugly and scary pedestrian tunnels into creative meeting places. You sing a note in these tunnels, and they sing back the same note, but with a beautiful choir. And they're also self-learning, so they remember all notes that everyone have sung. And when no human is singing, it can burst out in its own melody that it has created from the most common notes. So each tunnel develop its own musical dialect. And we're building Internet of Sounds instead of Internet of Things. So the sounds of the objects in a home become digital controllers. Or robots serving cookies. We built 25 simple and stupid robots that needed the help of humans to find their way. And this is Anna. I've shown her before. She's a robot with built-in disabilities.
Would you like to play a game of Pong? Okay, let's go.
So she doesn't move very well. She's visually impaired, hearing impaired. She easily gets lost, and she has autism. But unlike other robots, she's very open about her disabilities. It's not easy to be a robot, and I think it's good for us to be aware of that, to prevent possible future robot racism.
You lose.
Because robots will be our companions as long as humans will be on Earth, maybe longer. But right now, we build them to be our slaves. So is that the best we can imagine? Another thing, we built a synth that is so big that you need to be 2 or 3 people to play on it. A music game for very small children, but it's also a very complex algorithmic composing machine for children that are only a few months old. A game for iPad, and it works like chess on ice, constantly moving pieces, but it's also a grid sequencer. This is a bar where the guests create music together with their drinks. We're building a DJ tool for VR. It's like DJing with 24 turntables in space. Synths that need different fruits in order to work. Or synths that are clothes. Interaction with very few buttons. Synths that failed, they didn't work. Searching the internet by making random QR codes. A circular language based on colors. Money with a negative value. So think about that. We're building world's by far largest computer game. Radio amateurs all over Europe that have a big antenna are synchronized to the same server. So they send one signal to the moon, and the first to pick up the bouncing signal wins the ball. This is a game that is 385,000 kilometers long. Beat that. So I'm very interested in new ideas, not necessarily very practical or profitable, but always new. always using technology or sometimes abusing technology. I believe that imagination is the most poorly exploited natural resource on the planet. So let's use new technologies to make art beyond our imagination. Thank you. One more thing. We have a place at Södermalm called Rumtiden where people make prototyping, interactive installations, game, robots, apps, VR, deep learning, films, and a lot of different things. So if you build stuff or code stuff and want to catch up, just contact me. Thank you.
Before you go, Håkan, there is time for you to take a few questions if anyone has that.
Sure. Question? So it was all crystal clear. Good. Yes? Yeah, you're asking who we are, and that is, I would guess, is this collective of people. I sort of collect people, and we've been networking, but I'm an old man, so I met a lot of people with a lot of talent, so I collect people that do cool stuff. My experience is that even if I work with coders or architects or builders, so if there are people that somehow are artists themselves, they maybe make music on the side or they do painting on the side, then we can understand each other. If there are engineers and only engineers, we might not have an agreement.
Is the Yellowfire app still up and running and developed, or is it just...
The Yellowfire app is still up, and it's better than ever. It was recently updated with some new sounds and new features, so you should try that. Okay.
One more question.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the P2 electronic competition a few years ago, 5 years ago, about electronic music, people sending in, there was an app for that?
You're asking me if I was involved in the Swedish National Radio P2 competition. Yes, I was. I started a radio show called Ström on radio 2006. That was some years ago, and when we did that, the app was a part of that concept. So yeah, I made radio for a few years, and I made a TV documentary called SthlmHW, which is documentary about all electronic music from the very beginning, 1953 to 2013. So with the same people. So yes.
There's a bunch of people that maybe feel intimidated by all the other creative things that might exist already. What would you say to those people?
What I say about people that feel intimidated, the fact that there are so much creative things out already. I sort of recognize that feeling. And the longer time flows and the more ideas that are being born, then of course there's more to compete with. But do you really have to win? I don't think that's the question. If you want to do something that someone already else have done, then of course that's a tough competition because the most likely will be someone that is better. But if you come up with something that no one has done, then you're number one straight away. So new ideas all the time.
Do you make a living out of this? Is it the only source of income for you, or you have like other ways of
Yeah, you're asking me if I make a living out of this, and yes, I do since quite a few years. And my strategy is simply this: I don't have a strategy. I just do many things at the same time, and I divide my time between maybe 25% to do what I have to do and 75% of what I want to do exactly in that moment. So, and I think that's a very, very good plan, because if you lose that, then you might be lost forever.
Thank you, Håkan.
Thank you.
Great. Next up, we have a duo. It's Lasse Hessla and Göran Nordahl. So please welcome our two guests to the stage. You may want to come over here, actually, because then you're not standing in front of the screen. And while we do that, I feel like I might be slightly behind on getting your slides ready for you. Could you just remind, should I just load up the Google Slides you shared with me the other day? Yeah. Cool. So while you're chatting or you're dancing or something, I'll figure that out.
So, my name is Göran, and this is Lasse. We have been working with artists for 20 years or so. We're not artists, we're engineers, and actually I should have a slide right now, but we'll improvise. Lasse is mostly into mechanics, and I do electronics, software, and when I fail at mechanics, that is often, I talk to Lasse. And yep.
So yeah, as I said, yeah, I'm more of a mechanic guy. I'm the handy guy here. You're not so unhandy yourself, but anyway, I do 3D printing. I do CAD works, CNC milling, and so on. So and I have my own workshop. So normally I do art in the art shop. As I said before, as you said, we're not artists. We do art for artists. I've done the things we're going to do today, talk about today, is Karsten Höller, Birger Bergström, and Tove Kjellmark and Front. But we've done many art pieces, small and big, together, and separate also in many years. So, yeah, I think. Are you ready?
Yes.
Soon. Good. Do you have any sound on it also?
In a moment.
Okay.
Here we go.
Cool. Do you have any what do you call it?
Clear. I do have clear.
No, I mean the text.
We have text.
No.
Text. No.
Not from Google Slides, unfortunately. I think. Maybe you know how to. No, I don't know how to do that.
But then it is here. But how do you do it?
Ooh.
So, how do you solve
Maybe
this?
just pull it. Can you go without that or no?
Not me, at least. Yeah, but. Hmm. Yeah, I guess so. Hmm.
Getting there, it's getting there, it's getting there, we're getting there.
Speaker now.
Nope. Does this thing go like this?
You need permission, it says there.
Is there a full screen in here? How about now?
Yeah, where is the
How about now?
Okay, cool. I think so.
Yes!
Or
Easy peasy.
yeah. Can you do some more bigger text? I'm getting old, so I can't see.
Uh-oh. I can read for you and tell you what to say.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, as we said, yeah, we actually talked a little bit about this. I should be here, I think. Even more, okay. Okay. We actually talked a little bit about ourselves. So I think I should. Do you want to say anything, or should I start with the solar egg?
Please do.
Okay. And please help me here.
Clicker.
A clicker. Okay.
You're on. It's on.
Okay. Good. Thank you. This is an art piece for Birgitta Bergström. It's called Solar Egg. And in this project, I actually worked almost everything in CAD, designing and everything. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. It took, it was quite a fast project. It took me about 3 months, or me, I should say. It took us about 3 months from the start to the finish, where it's located right now in Kiruna. And it's built in 69 different pieces, in this thin stainless steel pieces with titanium coated, so it looks very golden, shiny. And I had actually a hard time to get a company to make these pieces because everyone is different angled, everything like that. So the companies didn't want to do it because you need to be fairly accurate when you do this. So it was kind of a odd work. Okay. Here you see the inner inside of the sauna. And because we had it in CAD, I could water cut the panel because the panel is mounted to this. So I could even water cut the panel and for the screw holes and everything. One lack thing was that it didn't have time to dry the wood pieces so much, so that's why they shrink a little bit. You can see some gaps there. And the stove is in 119 pieces of Corten steel, and it was a little bit of a issue to do that also. The Corten, yeah, sorry. And this is the base that the egg is actually hanging on to it. I think it's 6 meters in diameter, so it's wide. It's 900 kilos of steel. And here you have the outer panels, which is actually hanging in the on the base. You have to think a little bit about this thing. It's because sometimes you have 20 - degrees on the outside, and then you have a sauna which is 150 degrees in the top. You know, it's quite high. It's 6 meters high, roughly. So everything is going to move, and how do you fit something that it's about 1 millimeter thick, and everything is moving that much? That is an issue. But I think it worked now. Fine, actually. It hasn't fallen down yet, actually. And here you have a test assembly in Stockholm. And for me to communicate with artists, and in this case the guys who was building it, because I didn't have time to build anything, I used 3D printing several times, often on sending it by bud to do that, and that was really, really good, because if I send papers and so on, people can't understand three-dimensional things like this. So for me, the 3D printer has been really good. And yeah, the egg is about 1,500 screws to put it off and on, and yeah, I think the weight is 800 kilos or something in total. Here you see the stove again, and it's, yeah, the Corten is going to roast very, very nice. Corten steel, I like that. And I use the CAD program Rhino, which perhaps is not the best thing in this case, but it's at least something that I know about. So, and right now the egg is in Kiruna, and it's going to do some touring. From the beginning, I designed it to be just been moving 4 or 5 times, but now it's going to Paris. It's going around in Sweden, I should say, and I think it's going to New York also. So I have to do some redesign because of the input was wrong from the beginning. but it's hard to know from the beginning, of course. And the biggest part, I think, that's the stove actually, and yeah, it's free to take a sauna in the art piece, so it's just to book it online if you want to, but you have to be in Kiruna for the moment. So yeah. So Göran, do you want to do something about this?
Yes. So this is an example of an art project, and we both also work with industrial projects, and there's a slight difference in the workflow, because a typical industrial project, you have pre-study where you decide what to do, how to do it, can it be done, and then you make first prototype, rather proof of concept. And sometimes that proof of concept is good enough to actually show someone, but I know that it's better to make it extremely ugly, because otherwise the customers will try to start selling your prototype. So it's best to make a very ugly first prototype. And when that is done from the first prototype, you teach yourself a few lessons, and then you make a production prototype, the second prototype, and somewhere here you also start negotiating with the factory what components to use, blah, 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 and you make a production version that is version 1. And this process normally takes a year, costs seldom less than 100,000 euro, and it's okay to spend time, because if you're going to mass production, it's not the development time that is the main cost driving factor, it's the unit cost. If you go to an art project, you do the pre-study, and sometimes you exhibit prototype 1, you make small patches, and then not that much more happens. As Lasse said, for the solar egg, it was only intended to be shown 2 or 3 places, so you take shortcuts all along the way, because the main cost is the development. So you try to buy already produced things, make small tweaks, and then ship it. But very often you end up with an art piece that the intended lifespan was a few weeks, and suddenly it's on tour somewhere. So that's a problem. So you always have to have lots of communication with the artist, so they know, so you're on the same page, kind of, because there's often trouble when you sit there with, this is just a prototype, while the artist expected something that could go to the moon. And also, in the typical industrial project, most of the development is done early, and then it's just a linear process to the goal. While with an artist, it's a constant changing process all the way to the goal, and it can still be changing after the exhibition. So that's a bit different. But we'll have a look at a different project we made, and I suppose it's that button.
I just have a question.
Yep.
You're not the artist, but maybe you could say a couple of words about the art piece.
Yep.
Like, what was the concept of this egg?
Oh, the egg, okay. I can take that afterwards, perhaps, 5 minutes. We have this is a art piece we made for an artist called Karsten Höller. It's two beds that carry around sleeping visitors at a gallery at night. You can use dream-enhancing toothpaste before your sleepover. You can choose between 3 different kinds. You dream male, female, or childish dreams, I think it was. Our challenge was to build these. We tried to take shortcuts. I tried to sneak up on elderly people, listen at the wheelchairs to find a model that was very quiet. But the problem with wheelchairs, they are intended to be kind of quick. These shall only move around in half a meter per minute. So we ended up with designing everything from the ground. The motor, we had to have use 2 gearboxes to get low enough speed. We couldn't reuse some other design. We had to do everything from scratch. Let's see. When you work with artists, this constant prototyping is a very good way to bridge the gap between the engineer's mind and the artist's mind. So you have to constantly, here's a prototype, what do you think? And for mechanics, it's easy to die, because you see you maybe can't understand how to do it yourself, but if you see a mechanical thing, you can understand what it's meant to do. So here we are using cardboard to prototype the way the bed should look, where we should have the lamp, etc. While electronics is a bit more complicated. Here's the different. The beds should have a certain pattern. They perform choreographed dancing. Those to the left is our suggestions how two beds should interact, and to the right is the overall pattern. So we had those simulations we ran to show the artist it will be like this, this or that, and then I want B, and then new iteration with simulations. And the end result looks like this, and I hope, ta-da! To the left, it's not, that's just some simulation, and to the right is just from one of the test runs in the gallery. And they take turn deciding who should decide, who's the master, and the other one tries to mimic its movements but mirrored. So if the one goes left, the other one goes right, and if it detects an obstacle, it will have higher priority on that, and when it's not trying to crash into something, it will continue its game with other bed. So that's kind of maybe not the typical, but that's also one art project. And for maintenance, we've made this web service. We can remotely control these and see the status, battery status, history of its trajectory, etc. And this is also a typical example. This was intended for 1 or 2 exhibition, I think, and now it's on its 4th.
Yeah, and more is planning.
Oh, too bad. Because these are just prototypes, and that's a problem when they break, because they will break. Should we quickly?
How long is this?
It's maybe too late.
Yeah, so continue.
We continue, skip that one. Another project we made is a lamp that makes soap bubbles. If you go downstairs, you'll find this one just beneath us. Also a project we made together, and here it's a different process. Back then, it wasn't that common with 3D printers, so the design group Front came to me with a metal tube and said, hello, can you make a lamp that makes soap bubbles out of this thing? And then it was more like, okay, short time span, what's inside the lab, and then nearby shops. So this thing actually had next to my lab was Fiskarnas redskapshandel, where you could buy fishing rods. They also sell neck feathers from roosters, and one of those was used to make a new soap film inside the first prototype, but it has evolved since then. The first prototype had a smoke machine, so you could get white bubbles, and you see to the left the 3 first prototypes on the first exhibition. They were intended to work for 1 week because that was the exhibition, and then they lasted for 2 or 3. Later on, Lasse is more, he knows more about mechanics, so he helped us making a more robust design. Please do tell the funny details.
Oh, funny details. I don't know. I don't remember. It's one of the kings who designed, one of the princes, I think, who designed a lot of things for kitchen. That's the black thing there, which I extended a little bit. And one of the little bit odd thing is that I did a shortcut because I had, as usual, not so much time. So I did a what do you call it? I mirrored when I cut it. I mirrored that one to that place, but it's not so good to mirror threads. I find out, for instance, that's really bad.
So we should have 2 caps. We should have 2 caps, but only one could fit.
Yeah.
So the other one was glued into one piece. But if you're in short on time, that's things that happens. Okay. So what we want to say is, it's very fun working with artists. When at least I began helping out with art projects, I was at Konstfack and other places. My fellow engineers said you shouldn't waste your valuable engineering thoughts of not making mobile phones, kind of. The fun thing is the same engineers are now coming to me and asking for, is there maybe an art project where you can help? Because this is a way not to get stuck in your mind. As a kid, the best thing I knew was a red LED that twinkled in half a hertz, and then the excitement curve. I need more and more advanced electronics to get that kick out of it. But when working with artists, I kind of find my roots. It's not seldom it ends up with a red LED that twinkles in 1.5 hertz, and I see the joy in their eyes, and then I share their joy, so I don't forget why I'm doing things, because it would be so sad going to work and not feeling joy. Also do industrial things, it's good to have both sides, kind of.
I think the time is regularly run out. Sorry. So thank you very much. And you had some questions about the solar egg, for instance. The solar egg is biggest ambition wanted to make a meeting place. They wanted to, because Kiruna is going to move almost the whole town. So they wanted to have a meeting place, a place that people could meet. And then they thought that egg is a symbol of rebirth and the sun, for instance. So that's why they created it, for instance. The solar part. Yeah, it's in the summertime. It's a lot of them. In the wintertime, it's not so much. It's sun.
It's called solar egg.
Yeah, it's golden and it's reflect the sun. That was their tweak in it, if you want to. So yeah. So, but otherwise, I think I really enjoy working with artists, and I'm going to be on you later on.
When was it inaugurated in Kiruna?
When it was in place in Kiruna, 2nd of April now, I think. So it's quite new. So, any more questions? Göran?
No. But if you haven't seen the lamp, it's just downstairs. Go down and poke the bubbles. It's kind of fun. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Whoops. Okay, so we'll take a break now. And it's 7:10, so why don't we look to restart, in 15 minutes? See you soon. Okay, so I'm gonna look, see if I can find your stuff. Hey! I have not checked. That's a good idea. Let's do that right now. I will just. Okay.
And I don't know if I've spelled right or if I got my questions right.
Thanks for doing so.
I just wrote this in
30 seconds.
It's not the end, there's no point in the
Oops. Okay. What would you like? That one. Jättebra. Jättekul. We're going to put the timer on so you'll have 5 minutes. And just keep that in mind because there's 23 slides. Maybe you're not planning to go through all of them.
There's no text, so.
Oh, okay. You're just, yeah, it'll just be like this. So when it comes on, it'll just be like back. So yeah, if you're just kind of like powering through it, then it's going to be fine. But I mean, 5 minutes, 22 slides, that's like 3 enough time to reflect a little bit on them. Cool. Great. Thank you. How are you? Why? What's up?
No, I'm moving my boats.
Your boat?
Yes. It's a long story.
This sounds like a good story, though.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lightning talk story.
Maybe for the autumn. Most likely.
Should we get your stuff ready?
What's the order?
I don't know. What should we? Hang on. You're not doing a talk tonight, are you?
I haven't signed up, but I was going to check with space. I can do a small on upcycling with electronics.
Interesting. What does that mean?
Making art with what you find.
Nice. That would be great. We do have a cancellation, so I think that would be great. What should I call it? Upcycling with electronics?
Or making art with what you find. Might be.
That's good.
And I'll go with it.
Okay. What you find? Oh, shut up. That's great. Love it.
It's a 5-minute like together. Yeah, well, that's lightning talk should be like that. That's why it's not 20 minutes. Yeah, hanging together by duct tape. Literally. Yeah.
If you're doing a lightning talk after the break, please come see me to make sure I got your files.
My name is Dave.
Okay, we're going to start in just a few minutes. Maybe 2 minutes. Okay. Check 1, 2. Okay. Sorry, there's only one photo on there. Cool. I hope you had a good break. Now it's time for the second half. Second half, like I mentioned, is the lightning talks. So we cap them at 5 minutes. There's no questions. So we're going to power through at least 7 talks. If there's anyone else who wants to join, just come up and see me. We just added a talk because Daniel came up and said he'd like to do one. So we've added one from making art from what you find. Are you going to demos? Did you bring something? Something, good. Okay. We're going to start with Nicholas from Obscure to talk about their project or his project with art and technology in elevators. Where is Nicholas? Oh, there you are. Perfect. Please welcome Nicholas to the stage.
Thank you. So first time I'm doing a 5-minute talk, so that should be fun. I actually have a engineering background too, but somehow did not end up at Ericsson, which I also think was a good choice. Can I click?
Yes.
This one?
Maybe not.
So as the previous speakers, we've been doing a lot of our public digital art installations, and our focus has more been on digital projections, custom screen, and different kind of user interactions. And I would say not so much for artists per se, but more for bigger companies. But quite similar, and I had a plan to have a talk about one of those projects, but then I realized we actually have one fun project we made a product out of, and I thought I should tell about that one. I'll have a short 1-minute video that I'll show, and that explains half of it. I don't know, we should have music. We don't, but we do. So we got one of our regular projects, they wanted to make something cool in an elevator, and we thought, that there's some things with elevators that are a little bit different when it comes to interaction in there. So instead of doing interaction, we wanted to make a virtual window when you get a feeling that you look out, as you can see, you look outside and you're somewhere else. So instead of being in a busy city, you could be outside looking at a maybe fjord or an Alp landscape. And I made 2 quick things, a little bit for the guys that want to talk technology. So we want to hook up the elevators, where this is actually done. It's installed and it's running. It's IoT connected, so it's connected to the internet, which allows us to do monitoring, so we can quickly fix it if it's broken, and also make content updates. We have our separate laser distance measure, since we want to know exactly where the elevator is, and it's 2 centimeter accurate and runs at 60 frames a second or 60 hertz, which works well with computer graphics. And the elevators know where they are, but it's difficult to get into that, get that data from the elevator manufacturers. So we had to build our own solution. We power all this with pretty modern gaming computers, NVIDIA graphics. The 1070 card is the one we use right now. And we do put in OLED display, the OLED wallpaper display. It's only 4mm thick. And that's really important in elevators, because the 2 biggest problems is weight and how much space you take out for an installation. And since we only add about 15 kilos and add 4mm, basically we don't interfere with the basic operation of an elevator. And a little bit about the art. So we do all the art in modern game engines, and here it says modern AA game graphic style. We work with some of the really good special effects and gaming studios in Stockholm to make the content. And it's not AAA like DICE, but it's pretty close. It's really nice. We set the graphics to the time of day. So when you show up in the morning, you go to your office, it's morning light. At lunchtime, you have the sun is up, it's regular midday lighting. And in the evening, the sun sets and it gets dark. So if you work really late, you're going to see it's going to be pretty dark in the elevator when you get home. And we can also add weather. So we tie into some API on the weather, what the weather's outside, and it's kind of a fun thing. And I think the biggest thing is that it's a product, we want to put it out there, people love it. There's one running in Gallerian right now. We have said no advertising in here. We know that this is something where people have to go up and down the elevator, and we don't want to force messages. We want to, instead of making elevator ride less nice, we want to make it more nice. So that's one thing that we said early on. And I don't know if that was 5 minutes or not. I hope so. Thank you. Please reach out if you're interested, because we're interested to hook up with people that are interested in this. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Sabina? Oh, there. Great. Cool. So next up, please welcome Sabina Kasper to the stage.
Hello, my name is Sabina Kasper, and I am a fashion accessory designer. I've been working internationally, and for example, with Acne Studios here in Stockholm. But I'm afraid to disappoint you today because I'm not going to go through contemporary fashion scenes so much. This speech is more about what we have in common and as humans and tech interested.
Take the mic closer.
Yes. Okay. So we start with some history, and here we can see. I think it is the goddess of Isis with the sun above her head. Might be 1,000 years before Christ. And we have other Egyptian sculptures with the symbolism of the sun. Here we have Greek jewelry from the Mediterranean area. And in the 50s or 60s, we have Picasso, who make jewelry, golden jewelry with the symbol of the sun. We have the famous surrealist artist Max Ernst, who make golden jewelry for women. And they are quite cute, primitive, funny. And Max Ernst sculptures. Today we see many women and creators doing fashion jewelry with the inspiration of emojis and the smiley and the sun. And actually on Emoji Tracker, we can see in real time how we share the emojis on Twitter. And it's actually becoming our biggest common language on Earth. And my reflection is, are we going back to before Babylon's fall? And is this something really good happening? In contrast to this superficial prejudice emojis have, I think it's actually a very great idea. And last season for Chanel, they do emoji brooches and accessories, just for fun. Okay, that was the emoji chapter. And now we go on to wearables and watches. So this is Cartier from 1914. And here is also that time of area in 20s. And this was the high fashion pieces at that time with technology inbuilt. Today we have kind of Van Cleef with butterflies and natural science. And it's very fine art connected to science and actually qualitative materials that should sustain generations. And here we have Fendi, which is an Italian brand that goes, you know, with their DNA and make something crazy. And here again, it's a comment on with Arctic polar bears and elephants in the jungle, and they try to kind of make a comment on nature. Here is fine jewelry together with botanic natural pieces. You can see how they communicate that. This is a jar, Joseph Arthur Rosenthal, which is one of the greatest artists in jewelry. And he mixes a lot of stones. His butterflies. And how does this relate to our tech world and wearables? Yeah, that's the question. It's totally crazy. But actually it does. And it was delivered to you in this little piece a while ago, and you might recognize it. It's iWatch. And that was the end of it. And what I wanted to point out with this lightning talk is what role does our pieces have for human mankind, and what will they play in the future? Like, do we communicate with machines, robots? How do we keep our rituals and ceremonies together with our civilizational codes out in the universe, and etc. Many things you can think about when things are getting interactive. So, thank you.
Okay. We're going to just keep powering through our lightning talks. Next up is Lance to talk about his Commodore 64. Please welcome.
Thanks. Like I said, my name is Lance, and I'm neither an engineer nor an artist, so I'm humbled to be amongst some of the presenters here this evening. I did, however, catch Suna's attention a few weeks ago when mentioning offhandedly that I was retrofitting a Commodore 64 with a modern motherboard in order to make some use of an old piece of equipment that was otherwise broken. So with that, I'm going to offer the presentation, which is in PowerPoint format, in 40-column Commodore text, for those of you that can appreciate that. On the actual machine. And to my knowledge, I don't think anyone has offered a PowerPoint presentation on a Commodore 64 before, so this might be an industry first. So, the question I get from most of my friends is, why? And the short answer is, if you have to ask the question, then you don't understand. The longer answer to that question was, I had an inoperative Commodore 64 with a bad motherboard. I always had an affection for Commodore 64s. I think they inspired a generation of programmers, hackers, technologists, and in fact, anybody that's over the age of 30 in this room has probably used one of these in their past, and anybody over the age of 40 was probably inspired by this machine. Sweden plays, I think, a pivotal role in that. There were hacker groups that were born here in Sweden that I think represent the DNA of not just file sharing, but the whole Pirate Bay, Spotify, shared content movement that exists on the internet today. And that's probably debatable, but it's certainly my impression, having been a part of it over the years. I was actually associated with a few of these hacker or cracker groups, as we used to call them, from the stateside, and I used to trade software 30 years ago with Swedish guys I've recontacted since I moved here 6 months ago, which is kind of cool. So I set some conditions for myself. I said no permanent modifications to the Commodore 64 because, of course, I love this little computer, and I didn't want to mangle it in any way. The outcome had to be aesthetically appealing. It had to look clean and nice, something akin to what you would buy today. It had to be portable, it had to be usable, and most importantly, fun. So those were my conditions. The components that I used to create this little monster here ended up costing just over 150 US dollars. I won't bore you with a list of components there. Most of them are bits and pieces that I ordered over Amazon. But there are a few interesting tidbits that I'll highlight throughout the briefing here. Looking at the first stage, I of course disassembled the Commodore 64 and mounted inside of it a Raspberry Pi 3 Rev B. It seemed the most efficient means by which to put a standardized component in here. Made friends with a guy in Canada who was nice enough to 3D print me a mounting bracket for the Commodore 64 inside, and used a device called Kira, which translates the Commodore 64's keyboard, which is short a few keys, as you can probably just see by looking at it, to a USB device. So the Commodore 64 keyboard here doubles as a USB device. There's some close-ups of the Raspberry Pi as it sits in the chassis of the Commodore 64 here. You can see the lines are very clean. The engineering of the 3D printed material was fantastic. I'll give you the name of the guy if anybody wants to do this. I did have to modify what's called an ICD-4 cable so that I could connect internally the Raspberry Pi to the now USB keyboard. That was a simple modification. The components inside, micro USB to regular USB, so I could use power for the Commodore 64 itself. And oh, by the way, one of the constraints I set for myself was a fewest amount of cables so that it looked aesthetically appealing and it had clean lines. I figured one USB cable and one HDMI cable as an external feature on the chassis here itself. And as you can see in the photo to the bottom right, I had to use a Moto tool on the panel-mounted HDMI USB combo in order to get it to set in one of the round holes in the back of the Commodore 64. This is the finished product from behind, and I think it had pretty clean lines. The micro SD card is accessible on the back with a pair of tweezers, mind you. And then, of course, the only hole or the only devices that you can connect to the back now are the HDMI and the USB power. Some details that I really liked were the way the black USB HDMI combo fit into the round hole, and that I got the LED power light working, which was very important to me, just so that it looked aesthetically appealing. This is Commodore running Vice, which is an emulator available for just about any port of Linux that you can find on the Raspberry Pi. And in conclusion, it reduced cable clutter. It provided me what heretofore was unavailable, a multi-voltage Commodore 64. For those of you that have ever traveled to the United States, you know how frustrating that can be. Additionally, it uses a standard monitor. For those of you that understand what PAL and NTSC are, you can also appreciate the compatibility. It has Bluetooth capability, so you can hook wireless joysticks and mice up to it. It runs a variety of Linux operating systems. This one's running Raspbian right now. Cross-compiler for those of you that want to port existing programs to the Commodore 64's old 6502 architecture. It depends on which chip you're looking at. And of course it runs RetroPie, which I have a copy of if anybody wants to play video games on this after the presentations. And then, of course, and in conclusion, it can be used for PowerPoint presentations just like this. So that's it.
Cool, that was fun. I definitely want to play Blue Max or Wizard of War, or Commodore 64 was my first computer also. Okay, so cool. Marinia and Christina. Tell me, how do I pronounce it correctly? Mariana, of course. Mariana and Christina. Let's come up and maybe I'll just black out the screen.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, please welcome Mariana and Christina to the stage.
Okay, hi, I'm Christina, and I'm an engineer and a creative person and a very nervous person tonight. So when the subject of art and hardware came up, I had two questions, why and how. And the good thing is that I get to tell you the why. What is funny about art in general, funny and not so funny, is that art is subjective. So what someone interprets in a way, someone sees as garbage. So when you are an artist, all you can do is put your stuff out there and just hope that it engages the public somehow. It makes them feel something, joy, rage. Sometimes it poses philosophical questions or moral questions. And I think that is the greatest thing an artist can take away from creating. Nowadays, as you have seen from the presentations in the beginning, art is not just in galleries or museums. Art can be kind of everywhere. And one interesting thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a painting or a sculpture. It can be an installation. And the funny thing about installations is that when an artist has an idea, he doesn't just go to the oil tubes and the canvas, for example, but he starts 3D printing, building, like we've seen in the beginning, tinkering with metal, and creating all sorts of awesome stuff. What is beautiful about an installation is that it allows the art consumer to interact and be present in the work of art. And I think for an artist, adding this extra dimension to his work is very, very important and precious. So one of the ways you can do this, you can engage the public, not just visually, is by making them interact with the work of art, just like in our example. And I'm going to let Mariana explain to you how we did this.
Thanks. So I'm Mariana. We have actually done the basics of actually creating something. We started with a button and checked, okay, can we do stuff with the button? And then we continued with conductive paint. So we created proximity sensors, which is kind of like buttons, but they're with paint. And yeah, so we thought, okay, we got to the next step. We have the paint, it works. And it works with the button, and we got stuff together. What do we do next? And then we thought, okay, we can just do a drawing, and we can interact with it. And what could it do? I don't know. It could do sounds. And we studied like Clojure, and it has a really nice library for making sounds. So we connected the hardware of the painting to our computer, and it transforms the output of your touches into numbers, and then that takes the numbers and creates sounds out of it. For example, yeah, so doesn't look like much, right? It's just paint and LEDs and a computer, but what could you do next with it?
Well, it's a nice way to make a teaching tool for children. It is very nice to just tinker with and learn electronics. And just coming back to the idea that I started with, you as an art consumer become an art creator. So I created this drawing, but when you interact with it, you become the artist and you take over. That's it.
Thank you.
Right on time. Give me just a sec. I know. Okay, whoops. Let's see. Do that. Nope. That one. Yes. Great. Dave? Great. Please welcome Dave Lauder to the stage. We're going to play off a little video that he put together for a hardware teardown. Cool. Thank you, Dave. And I'll see if I can just figure out how to find it here. Yep. Huh? What? Sorry? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. So the context for this is for a while, some of us has been talking about it would be fun if we could do some teardowns, hardware teardowns. So the idea is you take a normal product and you tear it apart. And Dave took a phone apart.
My name is David Lauder. I work for Microsystemation here in Stockholm. My job is to kind of write exploits and break security systems on mobile phones in support of this. Today we're going to talk about the iPhone 6s. It has already been partially taken apart because I couldn't wait, and I needed to show someone the internals before we had the idea to film this. Once the screen is pulled up, we can see the battery, the USB and audio board, and the main logic board. At the top of the logic board is a camera and a bunch of connectors. These connectors are for the front camera, touch and backlight, the LCD and the front mic and camera. On the left is a connector for the power switch. As you can see, there's a lot of shielding. We will get under this in a bit. And finally, the USB charger and battery connectors are down the bottom here with the antenna connector underneath. Turning the logic board over, we have lots more shielding. At the top is the Wi-Fi Bluetooth chip and a diversity switch. After more shielding, we can see the main disk, and that's pretty much it for now. So let's go and remove some shielding. After all the shielding has been removed, there's a lot more to see. I made a mistake in removing the shield. I knocked a couple of caps off from the baseband area. The phone still runs. It boots and does what I need to do, but it probably won't be so good as a phone anymore. So here we can see the main CPU. This is the A9 processor and RAM. These are built in a stacked chip configuration, if you can see this from this A7 processor I lifted before. The CPU is the bottom part and the RAM is on the top. I've seen this before with old Nokia A6 as far back as the mid-noughties. It basically guarantees that line length and impedance is the same for all the signals going to the RAM. Often you see a stacked chipset like this being glued down. This is because it's quite stressful on the balls of the chip, and with vibration may crack some of the connections. So it's glued down to prevent this. Flipping it over, and beneath the Wi-Fi, the silver chip is the audio processor, and the smaller black one is called Stockholm. I'm not exactly sure what that's for. It's like it does USB and UART stuff. Under these two is the digital buck. In this instance, the MAUI. It supplies most of the core voltages for the RAM and the SoC. Under the flash is the baseband PMU, and also the ARC driver, which drives the solenoids. There's a little tiny chip to the left, which is the baseband EEPROM. And finally, some more radio with the USB charger at the bottom. That's it for now. Questions? I'm sure there are going to be some.
Thank you, Dave. Cool. We're almost at the end. We called this the first Stockholm Hardware teardown because I'm hoping that we'll do more in the future. If any of you are interested in helping out with those or know somebody, please come back to us. Cool. And next up, it's Göran Lundström. And I think I will be assisting you, Göran, to flick through some photos for you. Is that right? Yes. Cool. So please welcome Göran to the stage.
Thank you. I will have help to show a series, quite a few freshly taken pictures, very high. They have never been shown before. It's the first time, and the photographer is down there, is with a film camera. A lot of work has been done to have the extreme quality of these pictures, and there will be a new one each 10th second.
Should I just keep going?
Yes. You can start from now on, please. And they will be shown in chronological order from Battling's birth in 1911 and up to his death in 1981. It started with the non-figurative pictures. Did you have them there? With the ladies. Okay, then we'll continue from there. He changed from being a very figurative painter, and slowly, with the years. By the way, how many of you are acquainted with battling? Oh, there are some, yes. So you will see his development. I came across him when I myself went to KTH. I was the first year, I think. He gave me some challenges, technical challenges, some very simple and some very, very complicated. The simple ones were to construct frames that could be transported and still prevent any failures on the paintings while packed on top of each other. But he hated frames. So what we did was plexiglass lists all around, rather thick and steady, and that way he could pack them on top of each other. And then come the next challenge, and that was photographing. We had very little money, so we had to invent things to have the picture plane in parallel with the photographic plane. And so we took mirrors, scraped a hole in one, put it on in the camera, and the other one on the actual drawing, painting. And that when you look through a hole and to another mirror, you will have a long row. And when that is tilting, then you can have a perfect parallelism between them. And after that, calculations on his sculptures, which was quite sensitive to wind. Of course, you have the wind factor. And also, he had a, what do you call it, ryggskott, lumbago. So he wanted to have his easel with a motor. So we took a motor from a washing machine and made a screw, a 2-meter screw, and built it into the easel. And he has a gas pedal, and when you turn it down, the painting will go up. So he can stand and paint exactly these lines with the perfect height, with these back straight. But once he forgot to release the switch, the foot switch. So there was a crash in the roof, and that went 2 million Swedish crowns directly, because they are very expensive today, these paintings. And for the moment, it's very, very tough technique we used in a way. We have no Arduinos, we just had switches, which has made it complicated. And what's going on just now with battling is quite big. A huge book is being written about all his paintings, will be released in a year, 1.5, and all the paintings are being photographed for the moment by Ino Enesco down here. And that will also be a television film within a year or 1.5. So, and all these paintings that he has made has been stored here outside Stockholm and are now on its way to Halmstad, the museum there. It would be enormous exhibitions there within 2 years, I think. My 5 minutes have left now, I think.
No, I forgot to time you.
So, you're welcome with questions then.
Actually, we don't actually normally do questions, but there is.
Oh, I see. But we have
if, if there is a question, I'll be happy to take it before we move on.
Yes.
Did I make it through all the photos? Is this the last? What's the last?
I don't remember now. Oh, I see. They were not shown in the correct order as I had thought, but that happens. Yeah, there will be exhibitions later on. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Daniel, just before we go to you, I wanted to just do a quick test to see if I could call in my friend Eric for a quick voice call. So just give me a sec to see if I can get that rolling. Let's see. Do you see my screen? No. Maybe we should. No, it's a fail. It is a fail. I failed. Let's move over to you, Daniel. Please come on up. Yeah, welcome Daniel to the stage. I've completely forgot your last name, so yeah.
I sent you a presentation just spontaneously made. I'll just fetch my bag.
Okay. Okay. Can you do it without the presentation, or you?
I can do it without if.
It's just going to take. Let's see.
I sent it on the Facebook chat because I didn't have your.
Facebook chat.
Yes. Let's skip the presentation.
No, it's not happening.
Okay.
Is it?
Okay.
Oh, you have it here. Perfect. Caroline to the rescue.
Great. Okay, so my name is Daniel Khrinchenko. I think some of you have seen me before. And I like to build things, robots. I'm a regular at the Stockholm Makerspace. And this presentation kind of was very spontaneous. Well, let's see. Too many buttons. Should have one interface. Okay. So I thought of just spontaneously having a presentation of making art with what you find. And I wanted to present. I went to Burning Man a few years ago, and our camp was going to have an art piece, and the theme was Vikings. And I was supposed to have a Viking helmet, but for different reasons, my flatmate was really late with his rent, so I had money the night before we went out to Burning Man, and I didn't have place for a helmet in my bag when flying over. So the night before, we went out to a thrift store, and I found a bike helmet and a couple of fluffy horns on a cap. If you change to the next picture, this is what doesn't. Oh. Okay. Then I'll not show you that picture. I'll show you what it ended up to be when I came back instead.
That's good.
So, I'll lift it up. There you go. Oh, yeah. There you have the first revision of the helmet and what it became the first time. And then a friend had something called Midwinter Lights, a walk through Stockholm with lighted outfits, and I remade the helmet to this. I found this to branches with flowers, and I painted every flower pink, and then I added a couple of LEDs as eyes. and that was, well, one thing that basically just spontaneously came to be with pieces found together, and just as when I saw the branches, I realized they need to sit on the helmets, and the same with the eyes. And what I'm working on right now is, this used to be, if we switch to next picture. Yeah, here you have a loudspeaker for cats. Next one. So this used to be like 1940s style multimeter that someone was giving away a lot of old electronics. And if we switch to next one, I refitted it, kind of like with the Commodore 64, but with a little more powerful computer. It's a Udo x86. So on the next, and I'm going to use it as a navigation computer, and also for games. And I'm planning to have it aboard my boat that I'm getting up tomorrow. And the plan is also to have hardware workshops later on when I kind of got her in more shape. But hopefully I'll try to send out an invitation to people during the summer for like a hardware workshop, 4 or 5 people. Well, try to send it through the hardware.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, we will have it.
Yep. Okay, that was all.
Okay. Now let's see if this works. Okay. All right. All right.
Finally.
This is working. Something's working.
Everyone.
You're not on the big screen though. Hang on. Give me a sec. We're so close now. Okay. Here we go. Okay. You're on the big screen now. So, and do you see people too? Do you have a camera view of people?
Yes, I can see you all, but
Okay.
the sound is really, really poor. But it works.
I see. I wanted you to say hello to Eric because Eric has been helping me with a few community events in the past. Before doing Stockholm Hardware, I organized a number of Little Bits workshops. And Eric helped me provide some free gear for Little Bits workshops. And Eric has been very helpful to get in touch with us to help run the workshop in June. So Eric runs I was about to say little company, but I don't really know how little or big it is, but a website called m.nu that sells electronics. And Eric is a sponsor for the June workshop for Arduino. So he's just sent us that box over there, which is full of, can you jump on it? He just sent us this box full of Arduinos. And Eric, I know that you're also involved in some community efforts in your local community. So I just thought you could say hello to us and talk about what you do there. And yeah, that's it, really.
Sure. Swedish or English?
English, please.
What do you prefer?
English.
English, please. Okay, so I'm CEO of m.nu, but also I'm the chairman of the local makerspace community here in Linköping. The making and creating stuff is really close to my heart, so it's really fun to sponsor events like yours.
Eric, I thought you were going to talk for a little longer. I was over and I was over in the box, like picking out an Arduino. I was going to like show it off and everything. But thanks a lot for saying hello, Eric. Is there any chance that you're going to come actually see us at the June workshop?
Sorry, the sound is really, really poor.
As you could tell, we did not do a Skype pre-test today, and it shows in the quality of our conversation. Anyway, Eric, thank you, Eric, for saying hello to us, and for helping us put up the June workshop. So maybe just give Eric a hand, because he's been helping sponsor. I think Eric understood that something was happening, and that it was hard to really kind of follow along. Oh, here we go. What's this? Here we go. That was who was here for when we used to do Skype calls like 6 months ago? Anyone? Okay, so they were pretty smooth, right? So it was reasonable to assume that we could just do the same thing again. But no, shouldn't do that. Nope. Okay. I was thinking maybe the last thing we could do before we say goodbye. Actually, there's two things. I forgot in the intro to do a call out for Things. Things is this building that we're in. Things is a co-working space for hardware startups. And they are sponsors, so they're providing the space, the food that you ate, and some of the drinks that you had. So I want to make sure that show them some respect. Yeah, we can give them a hand. Thank you, Stuart. And maybe the last thing, we normally announce like when the next meetup is and stuff, but we don't really know when the next meetup is. It's going to be after the summer, maybe August and September. So I think the last thing to do is maybe just for the co-organizers to come up on stage and say thank you for this season. Janne and Anders and Caroline and Åsa, if you're around downstairs, please come up here. So the way that we have been running Stockholm Hardware now for a year and a half is we run it in seasons, and each season is 6 months. And we rotate people after 1 or 2 seasons. So we kind of keep people coming through and keep kind of bringing new perspectives and diversity in. And I think, Anders, you're probably done for this round. And you've got bigger and better things to go do. And it's actually the same for Åsa. Åsa has also been with us for 2 seasons. But I want to say thanks to all of you for helping out in this season. You want the last word, don't you? All right.
I just want to say thank you, Sune, for keeping it all together. And
thank you, Anders. That was very kind. So, see you guys in August or September. We'll see a few of you for June workshop. I think about 40 or 50 people. We sold out incredibly quickly, so we're looking into setting up another installation of the same workshop in August or September. So if you already got the invite, just follow the link and choose to sign up to be notified when we release new tickets. And if you don't have the invite, you'll receive it in the next newsletter. So just sign up to the newsletters on meetup.com. That's all. Thank you for this season. Enjoy the summer.
what a nice season. Excellent work. See you next month. Still enjoy your summer. How's your kid doing? Oh, no. Well, I hope you remember your stress in the first day. It's now we head down to the bar to have a night out. Oh, yes. Why didn't we plan like that?
I'm sure the other beer.
We probably not, right? We can only have one beer. So we'll have to plan that for
Yeah, actually that's and like you said, did a big demo in the morning. Unusually, all five, I did 5 demos in like 10, 15 minutes. Unusually, all of them went really, really well. And I just like, I spent all the luck and it was over. So by the time we got to tonight, it was just like, no, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work.
But you did a really good job.
I improvised like a man. I took my failures with the head high. Like, oh, this video FaceTime didn't work out. Are you a speaker box? Are you a speaker box? I'm sorry. Oh, I see. I had other associations because as you were saying this, I was thinking about speaker box. That was really nice. Sorry, hold it go. What? As like a medical thing or as like a hard thing?
It's critical design and then it's kind of like an experience design.
That would have been fun. So today, many of the lightning talks were in the theme of the evening, which was art and tech. But most often, we have a theme, and the main talks are on the theme, and a few lightning talks are on the theme, and then generally lightning talks. So if you have a lightning talk or this one that we were just talking about, you can just do it at some other. The lightning talks are just kind of mainly meant as a way to share back, like give the community a state of stand up, kind of like share some things back. So it's really just the main talks that I see. Yeah, I know. There's intro and the concept. I mean, there's pros and cons obviously, but I think it works well to kind of try to bring more faces to the community. People are like, oh, there's somebody.
Yeah, it's kind of why I came.
I have to run and say goodbye to these people who just walked out. Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Det var jätteroligt. Men allt det här var ju det liksom. Ja, allt finns. Det är en sån här liten, jag vet inte vad en batterilåda.
En batterilåda? En batterilåda?
Nej, det är inte för batterier.
Är det?
Nej, för den har inga...
Är det några anslag till det?
Nej, det här är mer ett släpp-on för att sätta ihop flera stycken.
Jaha, ja.
Det är liksom en pryllåda.
Jaha.
Som någon har fått patent på.
Jaha, det här är någon proto-kil. Jag hade hade en kil med lite sån här kopplingsdäck på sig. Här. Och sen är det någon själva...
Det är väl en klon, va?
Ja, ja, den är klon. Ja,
det är så.
Ja.
Hej!
Ja, Stolderless breadboard, det var sån här mini.
Ja, men det tror jag tror liksom att...
Innan man har det där caset som är på lokalmarknaden tema för det som det är en del av deras liksom, experience-koncept det är inte bara liksom loungen utan det är hela vakten, hissen, vannet. Och det här är ju många som klubbar liksom vartannat år. Ja men det var skitkul. Nej men vi är lite... Vart sitter ni någonstans? Är ni i stan eller? Ja, jag åker gärna. Jag hade faktiskt någonting och det var en sån här Kista Tower där. Och det var liksom inte... Har man inte rätt person så ser det ut så himla snabbt.
Men det är bra. Lägger ut tid.
Ja.
Men jag introducerade Fredrik Molander i Sverige och sen så är det en kille som heter Ed i London.
Jag var inte där hela tiden och liksom sådär. Nej men det blir synd alltså. Jag tänkte presentera något helt annat så. Fan, det är här produkter jag måste få ihop. Jag måste träffa folk, tala allt det där. Hitta folk som är intresserade. Liksom, det var en kille som drog igång det här med när han fick sitt heltidsjobb. Jag kom också ut och leta lite efter liksom, fler folk som har det. Då tänkte jag så här, men jag sätter dig och så här, ta på egen tid och träffa folk. Istället för fan, jag känner inte en bra idé.
Jag hör av mig.
Ja, super.
Bra plats. Shall we demount?
Ja. Perfekt att ha liksom inkubatorturné. Lite varje. Ja, just det. Fast jag har flyttat. Kontoret har flyttat. Så att det är mitt centrala. Ja. Men ja. Det är inte så hemligt att jag letar lite efter något nytt till efter eller att jag försöka frilansa eller någonting kanske. Det är väl det som bara en kund som håller på att snacka med mig och slå pengar så
Så att, ja, jag får se hur mycket jag behöver jobba på.
Du kan inte starta något eget? Alltså, jag menar, frilans då jobbar du fortfarande åt någon annan.
Nej, det står det. Men det står väl inte prata in i någon sorts stream-grej nu va?
Det är sant.